It can be a struggle to maintain your high personal standards without alienating your fellow project maintainers, established community members, and new or casual contributors. Demanding excellence and rejecting contributions both risk destroying your community's enthusiasm. But it can feel like the only alternative is your documentation becomes a patchwork whose quality becomes a matter of random chance. I'm a core maintainer and docs lead for Astro, an open source project that prides itself on being a website builder for everyone. We have an active, engaged open source community, and our docs is a huge part of that. As a former teacher, tutor, and curriculum writer myself, before joining Astro, I not only wrote instructional material, but also helped individuals get the best out of their own writing. But executing a large-scale, community-driven documentation project while evaluating others' work in public was a new experience for me. Additionally, I've had to figure out ways to support contributors who are largely outside of the world of technical writing and don't have a shared context, including resources such as the Diataxis framework or Docs for Developers. We may not have this all figured out, but we can see evidence of success as our community continues to grow and receives acknowledgement for the quality of our community-driven documentation. We're also all too aware that our contributors' reactions, positive or negative, can significantly determine the success of the project. It's not good enough for documentation to just be technically accurate. It must meet the needs of its community. And in open source, that includes its contributors who want to feel involved. To us, community-driven means collaborative, responsive, participatory. Now, these are great values and they sound good on paper, but they're not without their challenges. I don't want to dwell on the negatives of leading open source documentation, but I do want to acknowledge and validate for those of us here in this space and context that it's not all roses for maintainers. When I had a student who wanted to improve their essay, it was an explicit request. I think this could be better. Please help me improve. PRs often take the form of, I fixed this for you. But for me, the biggest challenge of leading open source documentation has been adapting to the public aspect of it. I'm comfortable writing and I'm comfortable editing the work of others, but it feels like a whole different ballgame when all of this is on display. And yet, community contribution and engagement is what we're all about. So, with some trial and error, we've found ways to make our values work with the constraint of being in the public eye. Collaborative. Docs are reviewed, discussed, and approved publicly on GitHub. No one's PR is merged, not even a maintainer, without a looks good to me from at least one Team Docs member. If I, as a docs lead, want to fix a typo, I need to get someone else to sign off. So what does this give us? Well, there's an easy way to get involved. Any community member can contribute and meaningfully to our process with not even a full sentence. And they can know that they are an important part of our process. And this process is public. They see that even maintainers go through a waiting period and are subject to reviews. They see other forms of contributions being valued, like comments on a PR. So if an individual is not a strong candidate to provide usable documentation themselves, maybe they would be able to point out a technical subtlety or nuance that's missing from an existing proposal and take that PR to another level. It also gives us the cover to balance our workload amid the unpredictability of community submissions. We give ourselves explicit permission to think carefully about each PR, as well as to wait for other perspectives or second thoughts to surface. This all leads to better, richer docs with more community participation. And it absolutely provides us with cover to pause, take a breath, and handle those more challenging or unsolicited PRs. It gives us permission to say, nope, I am not in the best position to craft a public response to this. We know we should write documentation from a place of reader empathy because you don't know in what state the reader is arriving at your docs. We write for users who are stressed, who have been troubleshooting, who are at their wits' end. And we have to extend that same courtesy to ourselves during the process of writing the docs. Responsive. Docs are not just written with some hypothetical reader in mind, but often directly in response to stated or observed needs from our community. When Astro's Team Docs was established, many of our inaugural members were also support squad members. We knew the questions people were asking in our support threads, and we had lots of practice answering them. It was natural for us to apply that experience to the docs and let it steer our documentation decisions. Support is just documentation that hasn't made it into the docs yet. If someone asks a question, answer with documentation. If the documentation doesn't exist, write the documentation, then answer the question with documentation. And that's from Jen Luker, Knitcode Monkey on Twitter. We could even jump right into those very conversations ourselves and ask things like, this is what we currently have in docs. How well does it answer your question? Or what could we have put in the docs that would have helped you out with this? Or where in the docs would you have expected to find this? We had a supply of raw content already written in support threads by unsuspecting docs contributors, and doing the legwork to filter, assess, and collect it was extremely valuable, just as valuable as a submitted PR. We could harness or steer community members who might not be up to the task of writing content themselves, and this led to PRs with higher quality pre-vetted material that came directly from our users' own questions and filled in gaps in our existing documentation. Participatory. Docs are open to contributions of any type from any member of the community. Since we were the only game in town for this relatively new product, our docs were not only our single source of truth, they were the single source of truth. Although we knew our docs needed restructuring, they also needed to keep up with constantly evolving features that come with early version product changes. We didn't feel that we could split our resources writing a second set of docs behind the scenes, while at the same time maintaining the only docs that existed for our community. So we decided to edit existing content in place in public. Our live docs would update as changes were made, in full view of and with participation of the community. We were inspired by the success of our support squad, who were able to provide value without agonizing over crafting the perfect response every time. So when reviewing PRs, we focused on just two key questions. Is this content correct? Is this content helpful? And thus, not worse than what we had before was born. To allow the greatest number of contributions without compromising the quality of existing documentation, we intentionally set a lower standard, maybe even the lowest possible standard, in order to improve quality. With this attitude, we were able to increase the number of PRs we could accept because the barrier to new contributors was low. Many of our new contributors weren't just new to our repo. This was their first ever open source PR. We made the bar within their reach. We didn't have to spend a lot of time debating or trying to edit to an optimal final form. This saved us from getting caught up in conversations maybe we weren't expecting or prepared to have. We fed the machine by creating an upward spiral. When we hear the word spiral, it's usually in the sense of a downward spiral where things spin more and more out of control. We could set contributors on an upward spiral. Having a PR merged means wanting to do it again. Not worse than what we had before changes your focus. Incomplete documentation is not a crime. It's an invitation. This means you can accept more PRs than you thought you could, or accept them with less editing effort. Wait for someone else to come along and tell you what's missing, and chances are they will tell you. You can rely on the next incremental PR to improve again, and get another community member happily contributing in the process. Your goal is to help community members contribute and to help them improve the quality of their contributions. Not worse than what we had before means it's no longer about what would I write. It's now, What contribution would I like to receive? What would I accept in a PR? The most productive, if maybe unsatisfying answer to the question, why did they think this was a useful PR, is because you haven't told them why it's not. When you receive a PR that isn't up to your standards, that's an opportunity to improve how you communicate to the community which PRs are helpful to receive. Recognize that the PR author thought there was value in this contribution, enough so that they took the time to contribute. Find the nuggets that would improve your docs. What would it take for this to be a PR you could use? Figure out how to articulate that difference between what you received and what you would have been happy to receive. Then communicate that to not only the PR author, but to your community at large, perhaps with a contributor's guide or a post. Additionally, can you find the superpower of the PR author? Is it enthusiasm? Is it availability? Is it thoroughness? Is it attention to detail? Is it expertise? Can you tell from the nature of their PR what is motivating them? Do they want to feel helpful, part of a team? Do they want to show off? Do they want to learn? Do they want to feel a sense of accomplishment? And can you nudge this PR into one that both helps the Docs project and meets the contributors' needs? And if not, can you suggest to them a different task that does? Someone who wants to be helpful will tend to have user empathy and can be motivated to do tasks that improve the experience for the reader. Someone who wants to feel part of a team may not need to make a PR at all to feel involved, and may be just as happy if you explicitly seek out their opinions in PR comments or ask them pointedly for reviews. Someone who wants to show off can be nudged into areas of exploration where you don't have enough advanced material yet. Ask them to audit and point out which sections of the docs are a little light in their eyes. Would they like to make some notes and submit them, then hand that off to others to write while they move on to the next challenge? Over time, we've seen this reduce the number of PRs that don't meet our standards. And when we get this right, some of our most egregious offenders have become our strongest allies and most prolific PRs. And if you need a little extra time, assign a label to acknowledge receipt of the PR without needing to immediately figure out how you're going to say, "So, about that PR." We use labels like add new content and site infrastructure, but we also have labels like should this be documented, which can prime the PR author for what's to come. And the fact that it's a label means that it's standard operating procedure. It's not personal, it's process. And it's so common, we needed a label for it. Here are a few examples of challenging PRs. But if you can articulate what challenge they present to you in your docs, then you can turn that around and spin it as a communication challenge and evaluate whether there's something you're not adequately communicating to your community. The kitchen sink, everything in one PR. Why is this a problem for your docs? It's daunting. I don't want to look at it. I can't squeeze it in when I have 5 minutes. It touches upon several unrelated things that ideally different maintainers would be reviewing. It's harder to extract out the quick win value, like the typo fixes, because there's so much more that takes more effort to review. What communication could we improve to the community? It's easier for a maintainer to be focused on one topic or one kind of edit so that our reviewer eyes are honed in on that. We might miss a simple typo in the paragraph of text you added if we're also checking the code for the UI component you added. Different maintainers are responsible for reviewing different types of PRs. And we can merge simpler PRs more quickly and get you onto contributing your next one. The nits. Not obvious typos, but rather obscure, even debatable language or grammar usage, being opinionated about spaces versus tabs, alternate word choice. Why is this a problem for you or your docs? It's often technically correct, which we want, but these PRs tend to be of lower priority than other more pressing tasks. Addressing nits involves a level of detail and attention that may outweigh its current priority. There may be no one definitive correct answer, so a choice needs to be made. Probably not one that's currently on our radar, so we haven't decided or even discussed what we want to do. Having this very conversation and explaining this to the PR author also takes time and energy, especially because this is likely to be a detail-oriented person who wants a very detailed response. What communication could we improve to the community? While we are interested in our docs being completely correct, at this time we're prioritizing fixing obvious errors like typos and spelling mistakes that are distracting to the reader as they're trying to learn. The issues that we have the capacity to address at this time are ones that interfere with the reader's ability to understand and interpret the documentation, or ones that would lead them astray while using our product. For example, incorrect code samples. We recognize that there are some competing standards, and while we strive for consistent documentation, we are prioritizing improvements that help our readers better use and understand our product. None of this implies that the PR author was wrong, nor that we don't intend to address these proposals, but our priority becomes very clear and can help set reasonable expectations and keep contributors happier. Not actually what we want. Maybe something previously discussed and decided against, or something that interferes with upcoming planned work. Why is this a problem for you or your docs? I've already spent time on this issue, and now I have to explain again, taking time and effort away from other tasks. It interferes with scheduled work, perhaps moving up something that you had planned to undertake more carefully or in a different way later. Or it just won't fit with upcoming work that you have planned. What communication could you improve to the community? We are community-driven docs, but we also have a team of maintainers with a roadmap and scheduled docs work. If you've identified something that needs work, there's a good chance it's already on our radar, and maybe we have a plan for that. Consider making your roadmap visible. Searching past PRs and issues is a great way to see if an idea has already been discussed and the conclusions we came to at that time. Checking a page's history to see how recently it's been updated gives you a good idea of the recent intentional changes to that page. And looking at some of the other branches in the repo, you can see the work we're currently doing. All of this is helpful to consult before making a PR to significantly add or change content in case we're already on it, in which case, ask us how you can help. In fact, with many PRs, it can be helpful to suggest that filing an issue to state the problem with the current docs first before filing a PR is a great way to give us insight as to what you think the problem is and provides a place where we can let you know whether we already have a solution in mind that you can contribute to. Reminder, every PR you get is an opportunity to improve your community's ability to contribute to the docs. It can be scary to think, I'm making decisions, I'm evaluating others' work, I'm giving feedback in public. But a more useful perspective is, I'm giving people a roadmap. I'm increasing their confidence that their PR will be valued and accepted. I'm letting them know how they can be helpful. And if someone doesn't take your feedback well, how valuable would they be in your community going forward? I'm currently writing an article on 20-ish lessons I learned as a bird photographer that helped me manage open source documentation. One of those lessons is, yes, sometimes a bird will poop on you. Negative interactions are challenging but unavoidable. When you do have to make a tough call, it can be helpful to consider all the people who silently agreed with you who now feel validated or relieved, who feel good about being involved in a project with strong leadership and a clear direction, who know what to expect as a contributor and what's expected of them. And if you tweet me with the hashtag, sometimes bird will poop on you, I'll know what kind of day you're having, and I'll send you a bird photo to try to cheer you up. But I've been photographing birds for almost a decade, and in fact, I've only been pooped on once. It's rarer than you think. So give people the benefit of the doubt that they genuinely want to contribute and want to improve the docs. Let them prove you otherwise. There's some public feedback I was afraid to give at first, but I realized you can edit their words, change their PR titles, close their PRs. You can give them extra tasks to gauge how serious or involved they are. You can make them split up those large PRs with unrelated things, reminding them it counts as more PRs for their stats. And remember that your contributors are not you. They are not necessarily writers. They may not be choosing their words so intentionally as you would. They're probably not thinking about how this PR fits into docs as a whole, and they very likely don't understand the time and effort involved in PR reviewing and editing and everything you have to consider. Here are some phrases that have worked for us when editing or even closing a PR. To be consistent. Many of your P authors won't have studied or even read your entire docs. It's not controversial that it's your job to be thinking this way. This is what you are there for. Consistent can include things like voice and style, but also things like not showing incorrect code as an example of what not to do, because it can easily be mistaken as an example of correct code. Thanks. I've taken some of your suggestions. They'll work great in docs. Not every part of every PR needs to be accepted. Pick and choose. This would make a great blog post. Not everything is for docs, even when it's correct and even when it's great. You know your docs and you know who you're writing for. You are responsible for upkeep and maintenance of your docs. By accepting someone's more unique or individually styled contribution, you are committing to its upkeep. So consider, do you have a space in your docs or somewhere docs adjacent for these community resources? A community blog, perhaps? This page is not yet scheduled for review. You can use this phrase when proposed changes would require more consideration than you have the capacity for at this time. If you've drilled down to figure out why a PR is challenging and isn't working for your docs right now, you'll find you can often describe it in terms of ideas like these: priority, placement, precedent. It doesn't have to be personal. And it's even okay for you to be seen as wrong. It might feel like being in a public leadership position, you need to be seen as being right all the time. But it can be a better community experience to figure out how to let them be right. Thanks for taking the time to add this example to the docs. I'm trying to figure out the best way to add it into our knowledge base. It sounds like you intended, do I have this right? To help us better understand this contribution, can you identify the problem that it solves? What might the user be in the process of doing when they would need this info? I'm not sure I immediately see that myself, and I'll need some more help from you before I'm able to move forward with this PR. Something you can do today is spend some time thinking about what kind of contributions you want and whether this is currently communicated to your community. Do you want style edits from the "I could say this better" crowd? Are your docs or certain parts of them in maintenance mode for emergency fixes only? If so, make that clear. Do you want others to write new content? Do you have the bandwidth to edit it? If so, do you accept unsolicited new content? Or do you have a vetting process, such as file an issue for missing documentation? Do you want someone to go through and change your spaces to tabs? Do you want more code examples of advanced or niche edge cases? Do you currently have a place in Docs for them? And if not, do you have the capacity to add that place right now? Do you have a place or a process for good ideas in the future? Do you have a plan for community contributions that are not an exact fit for Docs proper? And then tell them. Regularly, I post messages in our Astro Discord Docs channel that answer what I tongue-in-cheekly assume to be everyone's burning question: how can I help if I have some time today? These answers might include anything because our Docs site really does require a bit of everything, as I attempt to push the boundaries of how we think of Docs and who is a Docs contributor. Lots of people want to help, but might feel overwhelmed about where to start or unsure whether their contribution will be useful. They might not have a lot of time or energy and might not realize just how valuable the smallest contribution can be, especially when my own typo fix is still sitting in a PR. Just some of the tasks I've highlighted recently include reviewing particular PRs with a quick description of what it involves, writing new content in response to an existing issue, verifying a particular code sample or set of instructions, fixes to the site or styling improvements, researching something that needs to be written, translating a word, phrase, or entire page, brainstorming a list of common error messages for our troubleshooting page. I have even asked people to simply state a preference between two link colors. No contribution is too small. And then when people do step up, we celebrate their efforts. We reinforce the contributions that are helpful. We have added a face pile of GitHub avatars to our Docs landing page showing every contributor to the Docs repo. We regularly show off our Docs progress in our Discord showcase channel because our Docs site is a showcase of community members' efforts. A Discord congratulations bot recognizes every merged PR, mentioning not only authors but co-authors as well. And if it's a first-time contributor, we also sound a special alert. This Week in Astro and weekly community calls include Docs updates and shoutouts to notable contributors. These are both broadcast live in our Discord with recordings uploaded to YouTube. Astro Badges show stats across all Astro repos. The Docs are never done is a true and also potentially overwhelming statement. It can be all the more overwhelming and intimidating when this all plays out publicly, in real time. As we are trying to systematically improve the site as a whole with a unified approach, we are also constantly responding to internal demands and external feedback. We have opted for a community approach to our Docs that does its best to work with and for our community, to engage contributions from people who might never thought of themselves as contributors, and to provide a structure that allows them to feel comfortable and even celebrated while doing so. Every PR you receive contributes to the quality of your Docs, either because it's immediately helpful or because it's an opportunity for you to help your community contribute in ways that are helpful to your Docs. So let's go out there and get that money. And may your Docs always be not worse than what you had before. Thank you for listening and enjoy the rest of the conference.
All right, folks, welcome to the Q&A session for Sarah's talk. Sarah, thanks very much for joining us this evening for you, this morning for us. It's great to have you here, and thanks for your presentation.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, we did get some really good questions coming through in your session. So, and because it's just a single session, not a joint session, we've got a little bit more time to answer some questions. So we might use that to our advantage. So the first question I posed, which I think you might have answered in the chat, but I think it's good to capture it here and talk to it more, was, have you ever had a merge request that goes stale or just sits there for too long and you go, well, what do we do about this? So has that happened to you in the project?
Well, some of them do sit. Fortunately, with our project, we do have a healthy number of maintainers, and some of whom are sort of unofficially docs maintainers. They do hang out in the docs part of the project. So I have people I can ping when I need to say, guys, this PR really does need to get merged now. Anything has the chance to sit there. There was an unfortunate time when 2 of my normal I will ping yous were out for a week. And things felt rather slow then. But we've got, in that case, we have a very active Discord, and we have a role for team docs. And we have about 160 people who have volunteered to have this role to be pinged on Discord at my whim. So I'll say, somebody's got to check my typo. And I'll even go out on Twitter and I'll broadcast and I'll say, somebody's got to look at my PR. So we have a strong, healthy community. So usually we can get things done that way.
That's really good to see. So there's no such thing as stale PRs or MRs in your community. It's good. You got to keep them moving, keep the docs flowing, right? All right. Well, the next one was from Chris, and he asked, are there any service level agreements or SLAs in place to make sure that pull requests or merge requests are addressed in a timely manner?
Well, and part of the nature of open source and volunteer work is I'm not sure everybody comes with a different expectation of what's going to happen when you contribute to an open source project, when you contribute to a documentation project. So we don't have anything formal or official, but we do regularly go through and triage PRs, issues. We'll leave comments to make sure that the PR author knows we've seen it. If there's a reason that we can't move forward with it, we will say so. And we do advertise to our community as well. Do ping us if you feel you're not getting the attention you need, because it could be something that we're verifying with our technical steering committee. Should this be it honestly, there's many things that we in docs don't necessarily know yet. Is this a workaround someone found, or is this genius that we just haven't captured yet? So sometimes we're waiting on technical feedback to know whether or not to actually deal with this PR. And sometimes we're just busy. So we tell people, if you ping us, we will tell you which one it is.
Absolutely. And that just goes back to the whole communication thing, right? Just keeping the lines of communication open. I think a lot of the time, SLAs and things like that often feel like they're being slipped if the communication isn't there. But if you over communicate, there's no chance of people feeling like their work and their investment in time is actually insignificant. So yeah, that's really good. So all right, so we do have another one here. It's from Cameron. Do you have a business case or metrics that you can use to take to management, which says, my time is better spent supporting community docs? Let me just scroll over here because it's scrolling off screen. Yeah, I wanted to get this right because my time is better spent supporting community updates rather than writing it myself.
In fact, when I inherited the docs for this open source project, I inherited a community-driven mindset. So it's not so much me providing the business case as, in fact, top down, this priority was validated.
Right.
So for the nature of our product, our project, we do a web building product. So we'd like to have as many people using our product as possible. We would like people to be using it and breaking it and finding bugs and finding holes and gaps in our documentation. So it's actually a really good use case for us to get as many people in our Discord, chatting with us in the community as a whole and contributing to docs. So I haven't had to fight for this case at all. This is something that the entire project believes in and thinks is a real priority. If I had to make a business case, I would say that docs is support. And when we have good docs, we're providing good support. If we can make the docs better, if we can make people feel invested in the docs, they feel invested in the project. And I think that's a great business case, and it works well for us.
Yeah, that's great. Really good answer there. And I mean, there's so many good insights in your presentation. I just wonder if you've considered maybe formalizing them and putting them into some sort of community-driven guide on how to make contributions better.
It's one of those things where you do it and you assume everybody's doing this, and it doesn't feel like anything out of the ordinary when it's just, what you've accumulated. I do have a blog post on which this talk was written on my personal site because someone had asked, hey, how do you do this community stuff? I will be looking. I am going to write that article about 20 things I learned from bird photography that helped me manage open source. But there's doing the thing and there's trying to document doing the thing. And it takes time.
Documentation's hard. Then finding the time to write docs is hard. We all know this. Like it's a challenge, right? Now, the other important question that wasn't asked, but I'd like to know is, did you manage to complete 1,000 checklists?
941.
Oh, so close. You're pretty close, though.
Not quite there yet.
That's a lot of checklists. So great work getting nearly there. That's I'd call that a win for sure.
Thanks.
Well, look, I don't think there's any other questions coming through, so we'll wrap it there. Thanks again, Sarah, for coming along and having a chat today with us all about your presentation there. It was great, and we'll leave it there for now. Thanks again.
Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of the conference, everyone.
All righty, that's it. Nice. All right. Thanks again, Sarah, and go and get some sleep.
Might have a drink.
That's right.
Nightcap. Thank you so much, and I hope the rest of the conference goes just as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Now, to everyone else, don't forget to check for Sarah's sketch notes, courtesy of Lynette Voller. They'll be on the Twitter feed for Write the Docs Oz. So go and check on that and retweet it and get it out there. Now we've got a short break. So we will return to the main stage at 1 p.m. Australian Eastern for Lily's talk. So grab some lunch, grab something to eat, stretch your legs, and we'll see you in a bit.